It is time for another episode of The Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley. And there is a guest in the house. She has called in. She is on the line. I'm going to read her bio, get her introduced, and then we're going to talk about the book and other work, because this is not the only book she's written. We're going to talk about this book in particular because it's about to be released. It's I'm Speaking Now. Black women share their truth in 101 stories of love, courage, and hope. And it is a part of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. So let me turn on my recorder and start and read Breena's bio, and we will be off to the races. My guest this morning is Breena Clarke. That's Breena, last name Clarke. Breena Clarke's debut novel, River Cross My Heart, was an October 1999 Oprah Book Club selection. Miss Clarke, a native of Washington, D.C., is the recipient of the 1999 award for fiction by the New Atlantic Independent Booksellers Association and the Alex Award given by the Young Adult Library Services Association. Breena, who has survived the death of her only child, writes with depth and clarity about grief. Her work is marked by compassion and a magnificent use of language. Fascinated by the vast array of small and insignificant objects that contain finely detailed, denigrating images of African Americans, Breena is a passionate collector of Black Memorabilia. I know that's right. A graduate of Howard University, the Bisons, Breena Clarke is co-author with Glenda Dickerson of Remembering Aunt Jemima, a Minstrel Show, which is anthologized in contemporary plays by women of color and colored Contradictions, an anthology of contemporary African American plays. Her short fiction is included in Black Silk, a collection of African America erotica and streetlights, illuminating tales of the urban Black experience. Her recollections of Washington, D.C. are included in Growing Up in Washington, D.C. and an oral history published by the Historical Society of Washington, D.C. Breena credits having learned to swim 8 years ago, with changing her life after completing a course of classes at New York's Asphalt Green Aqua Center. She has become a member of an aqua aerobics class, swims 3 times a week, and practices Qigong. Breena Clarke is an advisor to the board of A Room of Her Own Foundation, is co-organizer of the Hobart Book Village Festival and Women Writers, and is on the faculty of Stone Coast MFA University of Southern Maine. And now the work that we're going to talk about. She's the author of 3 novels. The most recently published, Angels Make Their Hope Here, is set in an imagined mixed-race community in 19th century New Jersey. Breena's debut novel, River Cross My Heart, was in October 1999. We just talked about that a little bit. She is critically reviewed. Her second novel, Withstand the Storm, was named one of the 100 best for 2008 by the Washington Post. But what's getting ready to happen in a few days is the release of the book, Chicken Soup for the Soul. I'm Speaking Now. Black women share their truth in 101 stories of love, courage, and hope. And Breena Clarke has worked on that project. Breena, good morning and welcome to the Reading Circle microphones.
Well, good morning, Mark, and I'm happy to be here. This is a treat for me.
Well, I tell you what, I'm happy to have you here, and for a lot of different reasons. One, you're working with Pam Perry, and Pam has not sent me a lemon yet. Anyone who Pam recommends, we have a wonderful time. Pam has carte blanche with me. Like anytime she has any guests, I just give me the name, we'll get the date, and we'll make it happen. And that's what has happened.
All right.
And so I'm looking forward. And the other thing is, I'm a fan of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. So the fact that you're in that family, we're going to talk a little bit about that. The fact that you graduated from Howard, and as we were talking before we went on the air about Howard really being in the spotlight now since our vice president graduated from there and given all that spotlight, and shout outs to the HBCUs. We'll talk a little bit about that. And the fact that the book is about Black women sharing their truth. And as the title says, love, courage, and hope. Because as we were saying before we went on the air, in terms of we've always been speaking. It's just that now finally somebody is kind of sort of recognizing that we have a voice. So in any event, let's wind the tape back, because I see in your bio that I read we were talking like going way back to 1999. Hard to believe that's 20 plus years ago. And
yes.
Right.
Yeah,
so
it's been a while.
It has. So talk to me a little bit about in terms of like, okay, where did you intend to be a writer? Was that something, is that what you went to school for? Did you do that whenever you were in high school, or where did the writing thing come from?
Well, I always begin by saying that I come to writing from being a reader, an avid reader as a child, as a young person. When I was at Howard University, for my bachelor's degree, my major was theater. So I have the Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from Howard University. Go Bison! Yes. And those were some of my happiest years. But my degree was in theater. That's a pretty difficult career, I must say. And at that time was even more difficult than it is today. But I was in theater for many years. I moved to New York, and a lot of events took place, but I ended up coming back to my a first love, and that is writing. I wanted to write. I'd always wanted to write a novel. And so there was just a moment when I realized if I wanted that, I'd have to sit down and just go on and do it.
I know that's right.
That's how I started. I also started because my mother taped some audio recollections of growing up in the Georgetown neighborhood of Washington, D.C., and that's where River Across My Heart is set. So I had that jumping off point. My mother's personal recollections, my father's personal recollections. And my mother was particularly... her voice changed when she started to talk about the segregation in Washington. And that's why I decided to set my novel there and to explore the impact of residential segregation on African Americans in Washington.
And, and that's interesting in terms of Washington. I have many family members on my father's side who's there. As a matter of fact, my father was actually born in Virginia, in a little town called South Boston, Virginia, in Halifax County. So his brother and his sister, they made it to Washington, and then he moved the furthest out by moving to New Jersey. But his brother and sister was there. And matter of fact, the last remaining of any of them. It was 7 or 8 of them, and all of them are gone now, except his brother who lives in Washington. So I have cousins down there, and I have family members in Washington. My daughter lives down in Alexandria. So I have a best friend that lives down in that area as well. So I'm down there every now and again. I haven't been down there since the pandemic. But the interesting thing about Washington, I got to make sure I check this in my history, but I'm almost sure. But Washington was designed by a black person. It was laid out.
Well, Benjamin Banneker was absolutely instrumental in laying out design of the city. Absolutely. Correct. Yeah.
That's so. And then, but once again, the contribution was there, but the racism and the segregation and everything else always came into play. So, and that's the nation's capital. And so in any event, that's interesting. And there was something that you just said in terms of you became a writer, and it was like the perfect answer for this particular show. My show is The Reading Circle with Marc Medley. The reason the show was put together was in hopes of generating more of an interest in reading for people and to encourage people to read more. And many of my guests, when I ask the question about where did the writing begin, they say exactly what you said. As a child, I was an avid reader.
Yes. That's a common path to writing, which is not to say that if a person was not an early reader, that they cannot discover themselves as a writer. That certainly is not true. But I think that the clearest way to help a child get in the habit of educating themselves is to encourage their reading when they're young. And
Absolutely.
my parents certainly did that.
Oh, no, and see, good, God bless them and good for them, only because for me as a language arts and a reading aficionado and one who's avid reader as well, and an educator, for me, and I could be wrong, but I don't think so, reading is the foundation of every other subject. I mean, every other subject that you do, if you cannot read and comprehend, you're not going to do well in it. Now, that's just my belief. And whenever I was teaching school, I taught language arts, 8th grade language arts. And, since that time, I'm principal of a school. And I'm constantly pushing that message to my teachers that we got to get these kids to be able to read well and comprehend. And you're absolutely right. It does start in the home to a degree in terms of parents encouraging and modeling and so forth. So if your parents did that, God bless them, because yes.
But there's another issue here too, Mark, and I always mention this. We want to stimulate our children to be early readers. We also have to provide the books for them. And that's part of how I feel about what my responsibility is as both a fiction writer and a nonfiction writer. And that is to create characters or create opportunities that people can engage with books. Now, I have written fiction up to now, so I get the fun of creating stories. I do anchor mine in historical events. So I'm hoping that I can coerce a reader in. They can understand more about the events that I'm depicting, but they can also enjoy themselves. So I think that's important. I got some early enjoyable experiences with readers, and so with reading, and I would encourage people to do that with the young child. And I also feel very strongly that the book we're here to talk about today, Chicken Soup for the Soul, I'm Speaking Now, also creates an opportunity and a platform for readers to interact with specific narrations, personal narrations of the Black experience. And this book not only provides an opportunity for readers, but for the writers as well, the women who contributed to the volume were given an opportunity and a platform to speak.
Absolutely. And you said a mouthful in terms of when you're encouraging particularly youngsters to read, but even some of us who are not so young. I had a guest on about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, somewhere around there, and we were talking similar topic, and we were talking about folks who say they don't like to read, and her response was a quote, and I forget who the quote was from, but it was for the most part, and I'm paraphrasing, anybody who doesn't like to read just hasn't found the right book.
Oh, I agree with that.
Right.
There's so many books published out here. I mean, some that I would say, oh, my goodness. But, I mean, there are so many things out here. You are bound to find something that you would actually like.
Right.
And look, there's no shame. There's no shame in anything. You know?
And you're absolutely right. And that's the key to it, is whatever you're interested in. And I couldn't agree with you more. There is nothing that you could possibly be interested in that a book is not written about it.
I mean it. I mean it. I can testify to that. There is not a thing you could be interested in that someone has not, that two people have not written a book about. I'm sure of it.
Folks, seriously, this show, the purpose of this show is to encourage you to read more. All right. And as Breena and I are saying, there is no topic on the planet that someone hasn't written a book or a story about. And if by chance it is, then that's an opportunity for you to write it.
Well, yes, and that's Toni Morrison's advice. It has been it's the specific advice that encouraged me, and I know it encourages many others. If there is a book that you would want to read and you can't find it, and again, I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
She says it much more lovely than I'm paraphrasing. But the point is, if you cannot find the book that you want to read, you must then write it. You must sit down and write it. And that has been the marching order that I have taken, and I know a number of writers, men and women, black and white, who've taken that as their marching order, as their mantra, especially African American women, especially black women writers, who have been faced with the dearth of characters and novels that they would like to see. Many have said, well, I've just got to sit down and write it. And in many respects, again, coming back to who I'm speaking now, Black women share their truth in 101 stories of love, courage, and hope. And there are 101 stories, individual stories, that people have submitted. And they're reflecting the places that these women are. And the book provides a platform, a place where you can come and understand what their specific experiences have been.
That's absolutely right. And see, whenever I did when I was doing my master's in education, my action research was on reading. It was what I did was action research on students, particularly younger students in middle and grade school. If they had to, does their reading time? This is what my hypothesis was, that their reading time would increase based on the interest level in the book. And I wanted to see do you read more of book that you self-select versus what we as the teachers say, this is a part of our curriculum and you must read this? Which one do you tend to read more? And of course, the research bared out exactly what I thought. When the kids self-selected whatever their topic was or whatever their interest was, they read longer because they had to keep reading logs and how long they read. So far, that was a part of the research. But the research bared it out that the books that the kids selected for themselves that they were interested in, they read longer than what I, as the teacher, said, you're going to read this. And so to your point of now from the author's standpoint of, I am consciously and intentionally thinking in terms of my reader, in terms of characterization, in terms of plot, in terms of setting. I'm looking to create a book that a reader is going to engage in. That's important from the standpoint of the author.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you've been doing this. You've been doing this a little while now. We're going back to like 1999 and in 2008 and all these. You've been doing this for a little while, so you're not like a newbie at this.
Well, yes, that's true. I have written, as I said, I've published 3 historical novels, historically based novels over these years. Seems like such a long time, but time flies, as they say.
Well, it really does.
This current project is different for me. It's really quite different because it is nonfiction.
Okay.
And these are all personal narratives and poems. We have a great many poems that are part of this book as well. So this is something of a departure for me. I'm not a rookie, but
Right.
I'm really passionate about this project, and it's inspired me to even do more nonfiction. So it's really a passion project. It's been for me.
Well, I tell you what. Since you mentioned characterization earlier, let me talk a little bit, and then I'm going to shift to the Chicken Soup project. In terms of when you were developing your nonfiction characters, kind of like what was your process? Like whenever you're coming up with, like you decided to do a setting in Washington because of the segregation, or you did one that we were talking earlier about, part of one of your novels is actually set in Paterson, New Jersey. How do you, how do you come up with that?
Well, It's because I have done research. I suppose when I began with River Cross My Heart, I began in a specific area, Georgetown, the Georgetown neighborhood of Washington, and a specific time frame. And I had very general ideas at first about the people involved, about the characters involved. And I built them out as I did the research, as I talked to people, and as I uncovered more and more facts. And so that's the thread that I take through my work. I do a certain amount of research, and then I get excited and I start building characters based on the things that they do. In most cases, it's the work they accomplish. We, as African Americans in this culture, have been workers always, whether enslaved or free. And also the notion of enslavement and abolition. Those are the themes that I work with. So that's pretty available. Every day, more and more research on those early bits of American history are uncovered. Certainly, things are being uncovered all the time. So that's how I get started working with characters. And I'm just fascinated with the lives of Black people in the Mid-Atlantic region. I'm not sure I know why. I just happen to be, because this is where I'm located, Washington. And I think in a way, some of the settings that I get attached to have been under-imagined.
Right.
So I want to fill in. There's just so much stuff. There's so many people who've been left out of the historical record and all kinds of records. They're not in novels. They're not in the historical record. And I keep thinking, oh, wow, this is a wealth of opportunity here. So I get excited about that.
So that's interesting in terms of not only does the reader get a storyline, but they're actually getting some education and history as well. So it almost has, multiple benefit there. It's like you're getting a story, but you're also being educated about a place or a time. And so that's really one of the aspects of this that excites me about writing historically based fiction, because I honestly believe that the person who's writing the story, rather than telling the horse to go over there and get something to drink, is saying, oh, don't you think you're thirsty? So that's how I sort of feel that I want to do with the reader. I don't want to just tell the reader, well, now this happened and that happened. Right.
I want them to be thirsty for the story. I want to start telling them a story, and they get so involved in it, then they begin to pick up the information about the D.C. Emancipation Act or some other event, some other historical event. And I think that's very, very, very important, because so many African American people and events have been left out of the historical mainstream record.
Oh, without question. And efforts are underway to try to keep them left out. I mean, they're fighting hard for us not to be able to do that. That's why it's more important. That's why it's so important for us to tell our own story and to write our own books. And so it is critical that we're able to do that. And as you know, you're an author and you were in theater, so I know you know, the best way to get across anything to anybody is through story. And then if you take that even further back in terms of Africa and African Americans, that's how we've always gotten our messages across, was through story. So if you go back to our roots and our ancestry, storytelling is in there. If you go into even the Black church experience, the call and response, all that's a part of storytelling. So that for us was one of our main methods of getting messages across. So the fact that you're saying, yes, I'm going to embed some history into this storyline, that's a great thing, because not only am I having fun and getting engaged into a story that I get into deep, but I also came across some tidbits of information that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's very important to me. That's very important to me.
Well, I tell you, so we're going to shift gears a little bit, and the rest of the time that we have together, another half hour or so, or a little over than that, we're going to talk a little bit about how did you get involved with this latest project that's going to be rolled out on June 1st. And for those of you, all right, let me do this. For those of you, if you've just tuned in, I hope you've been with me since at least 7. I would really hope you've been with me since 6. But if you joined in at 7 because my guest is here, that's all the better. That's what really matters. I mean, I want you to be with me at 6 because I'm on the air from 6 to 9. But if you join me at 7 when my guest is here, my guest this morning is Breena Clarke. And we are talking about her historical projects that she's done to get to this point. But really what we want to talk about is the latest project, which is going to be rolled out, launched, or introduced on June 1st. And it is a part of a global series. And matter of fact, I just posted on Facebook, if you're a Chicken Soup for the Soul fan, tune in now, because this is going to be the latest book that they wrote. There's very few people that I know of who read or go into, whether it's a bookstore, whether it's Walmart, whatever, that has not come across a Chicken Soup for the Soul book on some topic. The Chicken Soup for the Soul story is a story in and of itself in terms of Jack Canfield and Victor Hansen, I believe his name is. In terms of them, how they started that whole thing, that's a story in and of itself. But when I tell you something that took off and is global, and it's now been applied. You got Chicken Soup for the Soul for teens. You got Chicken Soup for the Soul for moms, Chicken Soup for the Soul for dads, Chicken Soup for the Soul for educators. I mean, you name it. There's a Chicken Soup for the Soul for it. And now on June 1st, there's a Chicken Soup for the Soul that's titled I'm Speaking Now. Black women share their truth in 101 stories of love, courage, and hope. So my first question before we even get into what the contributions or the compilation is how did you get involved with the Chicken Soup for the Soul? Because like I said, that's a global publication now. How did you get involved with that?
Yes, they're very well known, and I have seen the books everywhere, as has everyone. I got involved because I got a call from editor-in-chief Amy Newmark. She was recommended to me. She was given my name through another writer who is a friend of mine. And she kind of thought that I might be right for this project. So Amy called me, and we had a really nice, really good conversation about what her concept was and what she wanted to do with this volume in their series. And I got excited. I thought it sounded great, and I decided that I definitely wanted to be a part of the project. And so we just started. We hit it off, and I was very excited, very passionate about the project, and we just got started.
I'm laughing only because you're saying it so nonchalantly in terms of when I say Chicken Soup for the Soul, that is a brand now. I mean, that's like, yes. if I said, another brand name of any other product in books and publishing, Chicken Soup for the Soul is a brand. So you get a call. I mean, I'm sitting here waiting for somebody to call me for something like that. I mean, that is an honor. That is an honor that a brand like that would now seek you out and say, we would like you to be a part of this project. And I laugh because you're saying it so nonchalantly, like, oh, yeah, it wasn't like...
Well, I didn't mean to imply that I...
No, I didn't. No. I'm not. I'm just saying that... No, I didn't. I'm not meaning it that way. It's just like, wow, that is like, to me, like... And you're like, wow, yeah, they called me out. And like, woo! Yeah. But that is awesome. I mean, just think about that for a minute. Out of all the authors in the world, someone recommended your name and they called you to work on this particular project. Yeah. That's awesome.
I was very, very pleased. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Wow. I mean, like, wow. I mean, so when Pam recommended you to me. And she told me the name of the book. I said, "Ooh, Chicken Soup for the Soul." Like, oh wow, because I haven't had an author from that series yet. You're my first one. You're my first person from Chicken Soup for the Soul, because I always said I wanted to get Jack Canfield on if I could get him to come on for a little bit. Never reached out, but now I actually have somebody that's worked on a Chicken Soup for the Soul project. That's big time. It really is, because this is one of those, I tell people all the time, and I know it's going to happen once it's released, because it usually Chicken Soup for the Souls are in like Walmarts and Targets and department stores and stuff. And
we
I can
will
remember,
be there.
yeah. So I can remember a couple of years ago I was down in Georgia with my mom. My mom's like, she's 83. She's 82. She'll be 83 in October, God willing. But I remember a few years ago I was visiting her, and we walked into a Walmart, and I started seeing books of guests I've had on the air. And Breena, I was like a kid. Mom, I know that person. I know that. I've had that person on the show. I've talked to that person, because their books are out there. And so I know whenever I see this come out, I'm gonna say, "Oh, Breena Clarke, I've talked to her. I've had her on the show."
Yeah.
But that is big. It really is. So congratulations to you. God bless you for that in terms of being a part of the project, because that's not going to go just here in the United States. That's going to be all over the world. And
yes, it's a very wide distribution, and that's exciting. We also have contributions from women who are outside of the continental United States as well. We have some Black women from Canada and also from the Caribbean who submitted pieces. So
I am not surprised at that at all. This story, I mean, it would be on par with like the Amazon story, where you had like Jeff Bezos start selling books out of his garage, and it's turned into what it is now. Jack Canfield and Victor and all of them, it's the same type deal. Something that they started very little, just blossomed to where it is now. And that's why I said there's very few places you can go where you don't come across a Chicken Soup for the Soul for something. How did they go about in terms of getting the women to contribute? How did that process happen?
Well, we sent out a call, and Chicken Soup for the Soul has a large network of contributors, and certainly Black women have contributed to other volumes in the past. So we sent out a very wide call for submissions to a lot of sources. I certainly sent out a call to submissions to people that I knew who may be interested. So we sent out a very wide call asking women to contribute. And the website Chicken Soup for the Soul has listings for all of the books that are upcoming, and the submission calls are available in those pages as well. So people who come by regularly will see that call. But we sent out information to hundreds of sources to ask women to contribute. And we got a very, very healthy response. Very healthy response.
So now so you had to read through all the responses, and then you had to select or choose which ones would make the book?
Well, yeah, that's the process. We had a process, and we certainly had a culling process. But yes, Amy Newmark and I read all of the submissions, and we grouped them into thematic areas. So, and we did, editing.
For those of you in the listening audience, now, if by chance you haven't heard from Chicken Soup, you haven't heard of a Chicken Soup for the Soul, I mean, I don't know if you've been under a rock or what, but I'll go very quickly in terms of the concept for Chicken Soup for the Soul is to take everyday, ordinary folks. They have an opportunity, as you just heard Breena say, to submit their work and ultimately get published in it. But it's not like, now, some of them are authors, some of them are writers, but many of them are not. They're your average everyday Joe and Jane that wrote some feelings down, something that they were passionate about, and submitted it, and it was now included in the book. That's the concept for Chicken Soup for the Soul. And they usually have like that number of 101. For some reason, they like kind of like that 101 story type thing. So erroneously, or I assumed that the title of the book came from the commentary from now Vice President Kamala Harris whenever we were doing the campaign debates when Mike Pence had kind of like had his little say. And then now when it was time for Kamala to speak, he was going to just override her. So she had to, like, for lack of a better phrase, kind of sort of put him in his place and let him know I'm speaking now. And Breena, I was sharing, before I went on the air, like, for me, I felt that in terms of what she was saying, because there's one thing I do not tolerate is for me to listen to your side, and then when it's time for me to talk, you're going to just override me, overtalk me, act like what I'm saying doesn't matter. So when she said that, I felt that even as a man, because I won't allow anybody to do that to me. I don't care who it is, mother, father, sister, wife, brother, I don't care who it is. They're not going to, I'm going to sit there and listen to them, and then you won't listen to me. So I thought the title of the book came from that. But as we were talking before we got on air, you said, no, that was already in the process. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, the I'm speaking now phrase was already being considered when the debates took place. And of course, we realized when we heard that we were on the right track for it. But it speaks to, and that's the word we're talking about, speaking. It is the opportunity to be able to give your side of the story. And that's an important aspect of this book, and also the work that many are doing. We have had prominent and not so prominent Black women who've spoken out, certainly in the past. My goodness, Ida B. Wells, Mary McLeod Bethune, and I'm just pulling names out of the ether. There are so many others who have spoken. But their views were dismissed. Their voices were disparaged. They weren't listened to. They were ignored. Many persisted. Of course, persistence is one of our virtues. Many persisted and created their own literary documentation of their views. And we're discovering and rediscovering those and getting back to them. But now, perhaps, at this time, when you have Kamala Harris as vice president, when you have Amanda Gorman at the inauguration speaking so eloquently, and so many others, Stacey Abrams, and so many others whom I, am just fumbling and cannot name at this time.
No, absolutely.
Now the opportunity.
That's right.
To speak.
The names are many. And see, this is the thing. Now, I use the example of, for me personally, not tolerating someone cutting me off or someone dismissing what I have to say. And yet, that's exactly what's been happening to African Americans, and particularly African American women. And so it is appropriate that what you're saying and what this book is about is, no, what we're saying is, no, you are going to hear me. I'm not going to allow you to, as the kids can say or used to say, diss me. You are going to hear me. And as you said, the list is getting longer and more distinguished. It really is. I mean, when you start talking about Stacey Abrams, Stacey Plaskett, Kamala Harris, Amanda Gorman, Maxine Waters, I mean, the list just goes on and on. It really does.
And one of the nicer points about these names that we're mentioning is that another aspect of this book, of the, I'm speaking now, is that it includes quotations from some of these distinguished women, historical figures and contemporary figures. And each story has a quotation. We've got Ruby Dee and
all right,
Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, also an historical figure. We've got Beyonce, and we've got a quote of Michelle Obama's. So even these quotes, which accompany each personal essay, they're valuable too. They're like jewels. And I envision that the readers would enjoy having this book at bedside or having it in your bag if you're commuting, so that you dip into it from time to time and read one of these stories. We also, each of 12 sections is headed by a poem. And part of that is because the reason we decided to go with that is that we wanted to have 101 personal narratives, but we didn't want to chuck out all of the lovely poems that we received as submissions. So we decided to include 12 of them in the volume as well. So I keep saying it's a really value-added book. There's a lot of wisdom.
Oh, no question. That's what I'm excited. I can't wait to get it. Matter of fact, because I don't know, is it going to be available in the e-reader format? Is it like in the Amazon or the Kindle format or download? Is it going to be available in that format?
My goodness. Now, you have stumped me because that's a question I'm not 100% certain of. I believe that it will.
Most likely, because I can't.
But
first
Mark,
off,
you've stumped me.
Well, you know what? Most likely because of who the book is in terms of Chicken Soup for the Soul, and because of their global, and because most likely it will be. And I can tell you right now, as on June 1st. Matter of fact, I'm going to have to go check Amazon to see if it's available for pre-order, because most of the time with books like this, you can purchase them pre-order, and then on June 1st, it would automatically download into my Kindle. But if not, you can rest.
I am a confirmed Kindle user myself, Mark, but I want to urge readers also to go on to the Chicken Soup website, and you can do the same pre-ordering. You can call up your local independent bookstore if you'd like.
Absolutely.
We sent out information and early copies of the books to over 200 independent African-American bookstores in the country and other independent bookstores. So they're aware of the book, and you can just call them up and order a copy, and it'll be there, and order two, because you may want to give one to your
I know that's right.
or your sister or your cousin or a very good friend. You never know. You'll want to keep your own for yourself.
Well, see, this is the thing now, because you just I have 4 daughters, and I will make sure each one of them get a copy. And so I was going to say, if in terms of if it's on Kindle or what have you, but she is right in terms of going to the Chicken Soup website, or even more importantly, supporting your local bookstore. And especially, and I'm not bashing, bookstores that are not African American, but especially an African American bookstore, if you can support them. Because again, a lot of times our stores don't get the same support as some of our other stores. So if you get a chance to support an African American bookstore that has the book, by all means do it. Or if you're a Kindle person, or if you can go to their website, by all means. Because and it's funny you said on it, because I can't wait to get mine, because I love the Chicken Soup. That's another reason why I'm excited too, because I love usually their series. And it's something that you said that was important in terms of folks who, back to this, don't like to read thing. The stories are short. They're not like reading forever. You will be reading 101 short stories. Sometimes they're a page, sometimes they're 2 pages. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's one of the pleasures of this book. You don't read every book the same way. You don't read every book the same way. And I tell that to people all the time. Some books are made to be dipped into. You read a little bit while you're sitting around and you enjoy that. And others are meant you sit in the corner until you're done.
That's right.
Different reads for different books. I'm convinced of it. So this book is one that I think can be on the bedside, can be out in the backyard. Certainly take it to the beach and dip into it from time to time. The book is structured so that it has thematic sections. I'll just tell you a couple of the sections. The one section is stand up and speak out. One section, the shoulders we stand on. We've got a section on family and food for the soul. So within each section are a number of stories that speak to that theme, and they're various. There are some really heartbreaking stories,
right?
And there are some very uplifting stories that are part of this series. So there's something for everyone to enjoy. There's the section where we come from. There's the section everyday struggles. Raising Our Children is a particularly lovely section. The poem that heads up that section is called Curating, and it was submitted by my sister, the poet Cheryl Clarke. She's a very distinguished poet, and she contributed a poem for that section. It's lovely. It speaks to the worries that we have, and so do the other essays in that section, the kinds of worries that we have as parents
Right.
of Black children. There's a section on sister friends and loving Black men, and also we end with a section on identity and roots.
Oh, absolutely.
We cover a wide swath of topics and themes, and as I say, the stories are various, they're complex, and that's what I like about the collection, because I think it gives a very complex and varied look at the specific experiences of Black women in this country.
No, absolutely, and one of the things about, we were talking about the stories being short and stories being short and being on the bedside, but this is another thing. This is one of the reasons this particular series has been so popular. And Breena, I'm sure you'll be able to bear this out. A book like Chicken Soup for the Soul, as you just heard Breena say, is broken into various sections based on experiences and so forth. You can pick up a book like this and read one of these women's experiences and be inspired by it, or at least feel like I'm not alone. Like, this didn't only happen to me. Because a lot of times we get caught up in thinking this only happened to me, that this has happened to no one else in the world. And then you'll pick up a book like this and read one of the women's stories and say, oh my God, that's the same thing that happened to me. And you get a chance to kind of see how they work their way through it, or at least their thoughts on it. So that's another beauty of a book like this, that have 100 different women contributing to it, that you can now, there's something, I guarantee you, somewhere in those 101 stories, there's something you have experienced, experiencing, or going to experience.
Oh, that's absolutely true. And also, there will be things in here that will strike you as a surprise.
Right.
As well. And I think there's something valuable there are many things that are valuable in this collection for everyone, for every reader, for the reader of the wide audience and the white audience. There are the stories, I like to say, the stories have the specifics of our experience, but in almost every case, they also speak to universal human experience. And that is where the wider audience can certainly come in. And many people, I think, will pick up the book and say, oh, my goodness, I didn't realize. It never occurred to me that this is the reason she does this, or she does not do this, or why she comes to this place and why she does not do that. And so I think there's a lot to be gleaned from reading the book. And again, I agree with you. It's not one that has to be read from the first page to the last. I think it would be better enjoyed dipping in.
No, you're absolutely right. Again, being familiar with the series and knowing how it, because they don't, that's the other thing. They're very consistent with how the series works. Like each book, it works very much for the most part the same way. But in terms of...
Well, and I think this book is a good example, certainly a good example of the Chicken Soup series. But I also think that if you're not necessarily a Chicken Soup reader or a Chicken Soup fan, you might discover in this book that you like it very much. That you may be surprised by what you discover. And I know I speak to it. I spoke with Amy Newmark. Perhaps I was thinking that some stories, if they are dealing with a difficult aspect of oppression, discrimination in this country, perhaps they wouldn't be included. And of course, that is absolutely not the case. We were looking for stories
That's right.
of genuine and authentic experience.
Oh,
and that
absolutely.
was an issue for me. That was certainly an issue for me. I wanted to be sure that we are not dissembling, shall I say, about the oppression. I think we did not.
You brought a very good point up in terms of, and let's be very clear on this, listening audience, this is not a book just for Black people to read. This is a book for anybody, and for those who are open-minded and willing to learn about other people. I mean, for our Caucasian brothers and sisters, they ought to read it again to learn more about, well, how do these folks think? You know, to learn more about the experience. So this is not one of those where, oh, well, it says Black women share their truth, that only Black women can read it. No. And it's not only a book that only women can read, because I'm looking forward to reading it as a man.
And I think you'll enjoy it.
I know I will. Yeah, because see, you're talking to one who appreciates our females, so I know I will. And so to hear the stories, and because I'm looking at the cover now, that is the actual cover. That's the actual book that I'm looking at, right? Where I see the women on the cover.
Yes.
So, matter of fact, I'm going to read from the flyer. It says, "We are speaking now," says Breena Clarke, co-author of this book, "now, because of the moment is now." That's a quote of the word now. "In this collection of 101 first-person narratives and 12 poems, this is an opportunity to hear the often silenced," that's a key word, "the often silenced voices of Black women writing for you and because of you. Black women are speaking and the world is listening. This new collection of stories and poems from Chicken Soup for the Soul introduces readers to more than 100 Black female writers sharing their truth about everyday life and milestone moments. Their stories and poems are honest and courageous, sometimes funny and sometimes serious, and all very relevant to what's going on today." Now that was your commentary on the either the, in the ad, or I don't know if that's on the back of the book or what, but I know that's what I have in terms of the ad. But important work. I mean, I could not think of a more appropriate time for it to come out, especially based on, as you were saying earlier, the long distinguished list of African American women and people of color and women in general. Women in general. Breena, people don't realize that women have only been able to vote for not a very long time.
Oh no! Just
because you were female, forget color, just because you were female, you didn't have an opportunity to vote. And there's still this disparity in salaries, depending. I mean, I remember there was a study done when I was teaching the diversity class where if a woman brought in the same set of clothes to a dry cleaner, she got charged higher than if a man brought it in. There are still those things going on today in 2021.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Now, before we wind up, Mark, I want to say something. I really want your readers, if they can, to see our lovely book trailer. Now, the book trailer is on the chickensoup.com website. So, at some point, I'd like them to see our trailer. They'll get the opportunity to see the actual faces of groupings of the women who have contributed. We've got, I think it's about 18 individuals in the book trailer.
Oh, great.
There are lots more, and we're going to be using their faces and their testimony. But I think you'll really like that trailer. So it's at chickensoup.com. And, we also got a really great review for the book from Publishers Weekly. And as you know, as a person in book publishing, you know how important that is. So
Well, that's on the same line. That's on the same line of what I was saying earlier in the beginning. Whenever you were talking about being contacted by Chicken Soup for the Soul, so it's on that same. It's par with that. Now it's interesting you're there because at the end of the interview, I do allow the opportunity to just that you can promote anything. The only thing you can't say is the cost. No. You're in good timing because this is kind of close to where that happens. Where I usually just allow the guests to promote. Like I said, the only thing you can't say is the actual price. But anything short of that, websites, shout outs, trailers, anything that you want to say, I give the guests a chance to do that. So we're about there. We got a couple more minutes to go and we'll actually be there. So when we get to that point, do share the trailer part again. So a matter of fact, we'll kind of segue into that in terms of, are there any events and anything coming up for the launch on June 1st? Any book signings, anything special prepared or what's
we do have a lot of virtual events coming up, but sadly we haven't done anything in person yet.
Right.
But that's okay. We've got a lot of virtual events and a lot of things that'll be happening June 1st. So please, I would ask the readers to keep in touch with us on Facebook, chickensoup.com, Chicken Soup for the Soul on Facebook, Breena Clarke on Facebook. I'm here, and we'll be posting all of our events in that way.
Okay. Well, like I said, for me, that's a when Joe Biden was vice president under Obama, something had came up and you could hear Joe in the back saying that's a big deal. And there was something in between that big and deal. But to me, and that's where I was at the beginning when we were like, wow, you got called by Chicken Soup for the Soul. This is a big deal. It's a big deal on a lot of different levels because this one is focused on African American or Black women. And I don't know, I'm quite sure if I go through the history, there might be something, I don't know, maybe it's the Chicken Soup for Soul for African Americans. I don't know. I have to look through the list. But this one is...
Well, there was one previous one. It's been quite some time ago. I can't tell you exactly the year, but there was one. But it's been a long time.
All righty. So point made.
Right. No, it has. It had been a long time. And I think Amy was thinking, wow, certainly now is the time. And so there we go.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like Joe Biden now. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. I'm not going to say exactly what he said, but this is a big deal. So the book is I'm Speaking Now. Black women share their truth in 101 stories of love, courage, and hope. You'll see the names there, Amy Newmark, if you heard Breena referencing, as well as Breena Clarke. You see that on there. In terms of, so this is a little bit different. This is one of the questions I usually ask. And since you've written books before, but my guess is each one is just as, what is it going to be like if you haven't gotten it already? That box appears on your door with however many copies, softback, hard copies or whatever, of Chicken Soup for the Soul with your name on it, Amy Newmark, Breena Clarke. What is that like for you or what's going to be like for you?
It's a really lovely moment. Yes, I've gotten that book. I've gotten that box. And I actually have posted a few photos of me opening the box because it is a momentous time. I can remember the first box that I got, A River Crossed My Heart. And that was like, I know I cried. And I can remember my editor said, well, when you open the box, take that first one out and set it aside. We'll use it for reading. I said, oh, you're just right. And so that's been a tradition I've done ever since. When I get that first box, I open it up and take one book out and set it aside. That's going to be the one I read from. And, it's a very emotional moment.
No, it is. Very much so. That's why I usually ask the question. It is.
Yeah, it's a very emotional moment, and it never gets old. So I really like it. It never gets old, trust me.
That's absolutely right. So that's a perfect way of putting it. It never gets old because, literally, you're going to have a Chicken Soup for the Soul book that has you as the byline. You and Amy are on the byline. Amy Newmark, Breena Clarke. You're up front and center. So, all right, we are at that time now where I was just talking about where I'm going to turn the mic off and allow you to promote. You could talk about the trailer again for a couple of minutes, your websites, where the book, where we can get it, download, how, whatever you need to know for the reader to get a copy of this book. This is your opportunity to say it with the exception of the price. Because that they can,
okay.
But anything short of that, I'm going to turn the mic off, is yours.
Oh, thank you, Mark. And I really have enjoyed being here talking about this book with you. So I would urge you readers to go on to chickensoup.com and look at our trailer. I think you'll enjoy it. You'll get a chance to see the faces of many of the women who contributed, and you'll see their faces appearing in our ads, tomorrow, the next day.
Right.
So please go on to that website, and you can find out about events at the website. Also, I'm posting, and I am Breena Clarke. My website is www.breenaclarke.com, and I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. So find me wherever, and I'll be posting information about our upcoming events. The book is going to be available for purchase June 1st, 2021, just about everywhere. I urge you to try and find an independent bookstore in your neighborhood and give them the business. But if you just need to get a copy quickly, go ahead and go on to Amazon. I don't mind. Or some other source, because it's going to be available everywhere. So,
all right. I know that's right. Well, and again, you were talking about the trailer. Talk a little bit more about the trailer. So folks again know where to go to. And it's on the Chicken Soup website. My guess is probably going to be on YouTube too. Probably Chicken Soup is using YouTube. But anyway.
Oh yes, it is. It is on YouTube as well. And you can find the trailer at a number of spots because I've posted it. I've linked to it on my Facebook. But go to Chicken Soup. That's all one word. chickensoup.com. And then you'll be able to find the trailer, and I think you'll love it. It's sweet, it's sentimental, it features the faces of the contributors. I think you'll love it.
All right. Well, I tell you what, so we were talking about local bookstores. Those of you in the New Jersey area, particularly because Breena's calling out of Jersey City, and I'm up here in Paterson. But for those of you in this area, if you want to find an independent bookstore, there's one in Newark, Source of Knowledge Bookstore. As an independent African-American bookstore, I'm sure if it's not there, well, I'm going to make a call and see if we can get it there, but I'm sure it'll be there as well. But Source of Knowledge Bookstore in Newark, if you want to know where an independent Black bookstore is, I'm giving you one right now. You have an opportunity in Newark to go there. Source of Knowledge Bookstore is right down there on Broad Street. So that's one way. If you have one in your neighborhood, wherever you are. And again, as we said earlier, because I tell you what, when you go down to Source of Knowledge, ask for Dexter. Tell Dexter Mark sent you down there to get a copy of The Chicken Soup for the Soul with the 101 Black women speaking. I tell you what, if not, but like I said, words like you just heard Breena say, everywhere. You gonna walk into your Walmarts and your Targets and your Kmarts and your Sears or whatever department stores are left now. So many of them going out, but you're gonna walk into those stores in those book sessions and you're gonna see this book there.
yeah, that's right. And I'll give a shout out to Philadelphia's Harriet's Bookshop.
That's right.
Hey, very close by, and
that's right, Harriet's. That's right.
You can call them up, order your copy. They'd be happy to send it.
So that's, because the pandemic, trust me when I tell you, I'm not saying like the big retailers, we're not telling you not to go there, but our small retailers, this pandemic did some damage with them. So they need our support.
Yes.
So if you can and you're close, whether it's Philadelphia, Newark, Jersey City, wherever, if you have the bookstore there and they have the book, like she said, if they don't have it, they can order it.
They certainly can, and you can always get their website online. You can order your book, and before you know it, there it is on your books.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
you
right.
know it, it's there. So you can just get busy today. and pre-order.
Breena, you are right. I have actually gotten spoiled, especially over the pandemic, because I didn't go to any stores. I ordered everything online.
Well, see, you see there, you see.
I mean, literally, it's amazing. I would order something on a Tuesday and it was there on a Wednesday. I was like, oh, this is all right.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, I've had a wonderful time chatting with you as well. And in terms of the interview, it transpired just as I envisioned it. I knew it was going to be like this. We had a blast. Shout outs to Pam Perry. Pam is a publicist, PR person extraordinaire. Pam and I are constantly in touch with each other, and anytime she has somebody that she wants to put on the show, she emails me or texts me, and I say, look, let's just get a date and just know that the person is on. And again, like I told you earlier, Pam has not sent me a lemon yet.
Oh, that's sweet. I certainly have enjoyed speaking to you, Mark. We've had a good time.
Yes, we did. And I wish you much success. And do know, I will be getting my copy on June 1st, or either I'll pre-order it. And I am going to, and I'm serious about what I said, I am going to order copies for my daughters.
Yes,
even though I got one that don't like to read, but that's okay.
She'll like this.
She'll like this one, right? So all four of them I'll get a copy of this, as well as, I'll have my copy too. So I wish you nothing but the best. Congratulations again, because yes, being in Chicken Soup for the Soul, that is a big deal. The fact that it's about Black women, that's a big deal, and on and on and on down the line. So thank you so much for working that project. And again, I wish you the best and God bless.
Well, thank you.
All right. Take care now.
Okay.
All right. Take care.